Recorded live from the mats of Radical MMA in New York City, the Martial Culture Podcast. Your source for in-depth combat sports and martial arts insights with Coach Rene and Matt Peters. Ring the bell and let's get it on.
Hello, welcome back to another episode of the Martial Culture Podcast. If you thought Matt's voice just got a whole lot sexier, it's true. Actually, just kidding. It's his wife, Brianna. I'm filling in for Matt today.
Hi, Brianna. It's great to share the mic with you.
Thank you.
Brianna is Matt's better half, who is completely amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, we're really excited. We have an amazing guest to talk to today, so I'm just here to listen and learn.
Well, I met this wonderful, wonderful fighter and champion many years ago at a Muay Thai school here in New York. And I knew from that moment I saw her, and I even said, you could be a great fighter someday. Her name's Tina Pettigrew, and she's about to make her Invicta, after an undefeated MMA career, she's about to make her Invicta fight debut. Tina, I'm so happy to have you on, and I'm so proud of you. I always adored you. You're amazing. You're fantastic, and I'm your number one fan, and I just want the fans to know about you too. So tell us about yourself and how you got into fighting, and anything else you want to say about yourself.
Sure, yeah. Thank you so much for having me on, and thank you so much for that kind introduction, Rene.
All true.
So, I guess by my own introduction, my name is Tina Pettigrew. I am an MMA fighter. Before this, I worked full-time as director of communications at a professional women's networking organization. So right now, when I was amateur, went 5-0 amateur. I was California state champion out here. And then I just recently made my pro debut with Combate Americas back in December 2019. And so right now I'm 1-0, and I just signed a 4-fight contract with Invicta. So I will be fighting on February 7th for Invicta, which is this Friday. And I'm really excited about it. Honestly, I remember when I was taking your class back in New York, Rene, and I remember there was one day, we can talk about the whole evolution of how I fit martial arts into my life, and it ended up becoming such a big part of it. But when I took your classes, that was just the very beginning of me really starting to comprehend how martial arts was going to be such a big part of my life. And that's such a unique experience to have. I remember one day we were shaking hands dismissing class, and you told me something like, man or woman, you're one of the hardest workers in this gym. And I remember being so flattered by that, because if there's a compliment that someone's going to give you, to me, that holds one of the highest values of any sort of compliment like that,
I actually remember that day, and I remember the hard work you put in that mat, and I was like, that is awesome. And I was honored to be a very, very small part of your martial journey. And from the day you stepped on the mats, training with me, I've never had anything but 1,000% respect for you. You are a fighter, and just unbelievably nice person, and great. More important than being a fighter, you're a great martial artist, and with all the things that I think that comes about. But how did you come from? I know you started in gymnastics, so you had that background of competitive gymnastics. But how did you see martial arts as being part of your life? How did that come out? How did you walk into Evolution? I actually don't know that. How did you walk into to that academy and start training, or what got you on this path?
Yeah, that's a good question. So it's I started gymnastics when I was really young, and I got super competitive really fast because gymnastics became really natural to me, and I progressed really quickly. It turns out I'm a very competitive person, so I fit nicely into the whole competition schedule and things like that. But when I left gymnastics, I felt like I lost a part of myself. I went through high school, middle school, some of middle school, high school, and college, not really being that athletic. Well, I shouldn't say that. In high school, I was very competitive in high school sports, but nothing like the way I was with gymnastics. It literally, I was consumed by it. I loved it so much. I thought about it all the time. People would ask me how I got so good, and I would say I don't know, like I'm here all the time would be my answer. Like I practice was my answer. But practicing even at a really young age didn't feel like work to me because I just loved it so much. It felt like I was exploring something. I was figuring something out. It kept me engaged, you know. But since I left gymnastics, I was sort of in that respect of my life, you know, the competition aspect, the whole being athletic, you know, and being active, I felt like I lost that part of myself for a period because I was so focused on going to college and getting good grades and then, you know, going into the workforce and getting a good job and paying off my student loans, all that stuff that happens when you grow up. And one thing led to another. After I graduated with my master's from NYU, I was working at a nonprofit that was a good place. Like it was a good job, but I was just depressed, you know, I wasn't happy with my life and I was over blaming other people for that, you know, like I was an adult at this point. I was in my 20s. I was like, okay, Tina, you have to figure this out. This is not like, you know, it doesn't matter what happened to you when you were younger or circumstances, all that stuff. Throw that out the window. It's like, those are all excuses. Like you're unhappy because of you. So I had to sit back and be like, okay, what sort of changes can I enable myself to make that will help me start to feel more like myself and less sort of lost, you know? I was, you know, needless to say, kind of out of shape, letting myself get stressed out and stuff. And so what happened was over Christmas break, I went to Pennsylvania to visit my family, and we all watched the UFC fights. It was Brock Lesnar versus Alistair Overeem.
I remember that fight.
Yeah, that was crazy. And they panned out to the audience. And when they did that, they interviewed someone who was sitting in the audience, a woman with a short, bob hairdo. She had like a cute little cap on and a leather jacket. And they're like asking her who she has in the fight. She's like, well, I'm a striker, so I got Overeem. You know, all this kind of stuff, like what's going on with her upcoming movie and stuff. And I was like, who is this chick? She's beautiful. She's articulate. And she's a fighter. Like, this is not the type of woman that at the time, you know, back then, I really was like, that's what a fighter is like? No way. Someone kind of like me, you know? And I looked her up. Her name is Gina Carano. And when I looked her up, I got really into her fights. I used to take the bus instead of the train just so I could watch her fights on YouTube on my phone. Because, you know, you have service above ground. Well, at that point. Oh, yeah. And I got really into it, and I was like, you know, I should try something like this. I feel like I would really like it, especially given my gymnastics background. So I did some research. I basically did a Google search, and I looked at the different places in the area, and there were a handful that I wanted to try. So I signed up for the free trial, but this is what happened. I went in for the free trial at Evolution, and I just didn't go anywhere else because I liked it so much. So I was like, you know, I think I could get really into this. And so that's how I ended up walking through the doors of Evolution. I just needed a change, you know, and I just took to it really fast, I think. It was like the beginning of me starting to feel more like myself. You know what I mean? Wonderful.
Now, you know, it's people talk about the martial arts as a catalyst for positive growth. And I think anytime you challenge yourself, you grow in ways that allow you to be more in tune with your personal bliss. And I've personally found that, and but I can't say for everybody else. But that was my personal journey, and I think it sounds similar, like you're in the same place. I know you moved to California, and you're training out of a number of different academies now. How did that jump from just training in California to amateur to pro happen?
Well, that's a good question. I would say that was probably the part of my journey so far that's taken the most figuring out. So I landed at Alliance MMA because I knew Angie and Adam at Evolution, right? So they were my connect from, you know, my life on the East Coast to my life out here. And I actually, before I moved out here, stayed with them for about a week to see if I wanted to train at Alliance, if it was the place that I thought it was, you know, high level training, had opportunity for growth for me. that type of thing. And if San Diego was a place that I wanted to live. And so after I visited for a little bit, I was like, okay, this is what I want to do. So slowly but surely, I ended up, making the move. And once I made it to Evolution, I was like, okay, how do I fight? Like, how can I fight? Which, as I'm sure you can imagine, there's a lot of people that sort of walk through the doors there and are like, hey, I want to fight, So it took some time. I got connected with a coach at Alliance named Daniel Rhodes. We call him Coach Day. He is since then and up until right now, has been my main coach that has worked with me from, when I knew, I don't want to say knew nothing, because I definitely knew stuff when I came to Alliance, but I knew way less than I know now.
Yeah.
And he has, helped me progress in every aspect of my game, just technique wise, strength and conditioning wise. I mean, probably without realizing it, mindset wise. He's one of those people too that, he's like, if people ask you, don't tell them you're a fighter, tell them you're a martial artist, because he really sees the art in it, and he respects my evolution as an artist, and respects that that winning fights isn't what it's all about. That's not the end all be all. He respects that I have a journey, and so I started competing amateur under the tutelage of Coach Day and some of my other friends at Alliance who train out at Alliance East in Santee. They helped me a lot with my wrestling and grappling because my schedule wasn't really working. Doing my full-time job, I wasn't able to train during the day with the pro team at Alliance at first for 2 years, I guess, when I was amateur. So I had to get in my wrestling and stuff like that elsewhere. So I worked with the guys out at Alliance East, and then my boyfriend and I both work and train out of a gym called Bonita Martial Arts Academy, which is where Coach Day is now. He's no longer working at Alliance; he's working at Bonita, and we ended up there through him. Yeah. So
are you still affiliated with Alliance and doing both academies, or you just switched over to Bonita completely?
No. I'm with Alliance. Yeah,
okay.
100%. Well, so I do train with the Alliance team, pro team now.
Well, fantastic.
So I'm working with a lot of the coaches there. So two of my two cornermen are Coach Day, who I just mentioned, and then Coach Eric Aresk, who is the coach that I work on.
I know Eric very well. There was a talk that I might fight him way back when here in New York.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we both won an underground tournament, and then there was talk to see if we'd fight each other. But unfortunately, I got injured. I broke my arm, and I had to pull out of that fight. But I have a lot of respect for Eric. He's a great wrestler and also a great striker. But that was the fight that here in New York that never happened. And
how funny!
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. But he's a great guy, and I one of my regrets is that I didn't fight him, because I know he's such a great martial artist, and I have nothing but respect for him. And I would have loved to test myself against him. But great guy, and you're in phenomenal hands with him for sure.
That's a fun fact for me to know that you guys could have fought at some point. Yeah. But so a lot of it is like making my schedule work with the different coaches and academies. Southern California, San Diego specifically, is saturated with really high level martial arts. And so there's a lot of really good options, and I feel really fortunate that I landed out here, because, you can be affiliated with one gym, but it is good to cross-train too with people in the area that are also really talented, up and coming, killing it, so there's a lot of really great opportunities here. But I'm out of Alliance right now.
Great, but I think that's especially true for women, because the population is a little bit smaller. That cross-training is really beneficial, because while you can get great training in with guys, it's like moving with a woman at your weight class is not the same as moving with a guy at your weight class. It's not the same.
100%.
And some
100%.
It's just the bodies, women tend to be a lot more flexible, and they can do things with their bodies guys can't, especially when it comes to jiu-jitsu. So, being able to be in that, I went out to San Diego and was training there with Barrett Yoshida, just for a few weeks, and with the Rodrigo Medeiros team. And it's just amazing how many, like on every corner, there's Dean Lister's place, then there's Salo Ribero's place. There's like every corner is filled with so many great martial artists, and it must be a wonderful place to train.
Yeah, it is. And fortunately, all of those people that I've connected with over at Victory and 10th Planet, all those other gyms, they're all really gracious, and it's a really positive environment. Yeah, I mean, like, especially when you fight amateur, a lot of people are like, oh, that person's not your size, or that person doesn't have as much experience. It's like, you know what? When I get into the cage, that might be the case with these people too.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's pretty unpredictable. So as many good looks as I can get without getting injured, I see it as a good thing. Fantastic.
And do you mind asking how do you find yourself when you're in other academies? I don't know if you want to answer or not, but like sometimes I know some women have some problems going to academy that MMA used to be. Unfortunately, used to be very, very male dominated, and the gyms were very misogynistic. I'm very happy to see that's not the case anymore. But how has it been from a woman's perspective in MMA going forward, and dealing with some toxic masculinity, some bro culture, some this, and I think when you're in the pros, it's less because everybody's about being a pro, and it doesn't matter. But at the amateur level, I could see it might be a problem. I don't want to put words in your mouth. But how is that navigating those spaces?
No, yeah, that's a great question. And you absolutely said the correct thing the way I see it. I think that when you get to the higher levels, it's less of a problem because I'm realizing now whenever I go to cross train, I'm always already connected with the women there in one way or another. Like I reached out to them or I knew them from something else. So I always have a built-in training partner when I arrive, and it gives you credibility when you know somebody, in general when you get there. But yeah, are you kidding? Pretty much every gym I've ever walked into, martial arts gym, it's kind of like, I think the thing that annoys me the most is when I grapple with men, the very first thing they say, especially the white belt, like the younger guys that are like younger to jiu-jitsu or grappling, say to me is they're always so surprised that I'm strong.
I knew you were going to say that. And it's like a cut too. It's like, oh, you're strong for a girl, meaning like your technique kind of sucks sometimes, or you're just diminishing you as a woman too, like as a fighter.
Right.
I knew you were going to say that. And actually, I actually had a talk with guys in my school. I'm like, we will not say that. You don't say when you lose, you don't say to a guy or girl, it's no genderless, but you don't say, oh my God, you're so strong. Just shut up, shake their hand and go, nice job. That's it. That's what we say.
Right.
But I knew you're going to say that. I don't mean to interrupt, but I knew you're going to say that because it bothers me. It's one of my pet peeves is the way people cut each other down, especially when it's like a white belt guy who loses to a girl and he's really insecure about it, which is just.
Right.
Yeah. But anyway, go ahead. I'm sorry.
It's like, is like, what do you mean by that? Like, is okay. Like, I know, like, what am I supposed to say then too? Right. It's like, I know, thank you for the role. Or like what I started saying recently is like, well, yeah, I do this all the time.
Oh, smart.
like the same thing as like, in gymnastics, how did you get so good? Practice. It's like, whatever comment you have about my martial arts situation or whatever, like whether it's good or bad, like I'm here all the time and I'm always working on things. That's what I'm doing. And that's what I care about. So thank you or not thank you or whatever you were trying to get out of me with that statement. But,
yeah, it's very different. It's very different if someone says, oh my God, you get tapped and you go, oh my God, you're so good. That's amazing. Versus, oh my God, you're so strong. It's not the same thing.
Yeah.
It's like a cut. And I absolutely hate that. And I really like when I have people that say, when you lose like this, you shake hands and you say, good job. When you win, you shake hands and you say, good job. And nothing else is acceptable. That's what you say.
Yeah.
And at that moment that you don't like losing, you have to fight your ego. And there's so many guys that have such a problem losing to girls, and it's ridiculous, and I hate it. But anyway, so good point on that. And in terms of the finding fights and stuff, was it more difficult to find a fight because of the population, the female fighter population, a little smaller, or did you have no problem at all?
That's a great question. It's funny. before I made my MMA debut, I really had a hard time getting matched. I was trying to get a Muay Thai fight. I would say like from August 1 year until March the next year. I couldn't get a fight. I couldn't get a Muay Thai fight. I couldn't get an MMA fight. And I don't know what it was. I don't know if it's because nobody knew who I was, or people looked into me and they were like, oh shit, you know. Oh, sorry. I don't know if I'm allowed to say.
You can say whatever you
want.
want.
Oh no. I don't know if people did look into me and they were like, oh no, I don't want to fight her, or if they were just like, I don't know, she's nothing. I don't know why. But it did take a long time to get matched for my first fight. But after that fight, it wasn't hard to match me. So after I had one fight, they were like, okay. So they came along after that. And then when I decided to turn pro, I do my research with this just like I did with my previous job, just like one should do with any career that they have. And I saw that some women never had any amateur experience at all. And then I saw that other women had a very little amount. And then I saw some, especially ones who started later, like more around when I started, who had a lot of amateur experience. So And the amount of amateur experience wasn't necessarily correlated to how well they did as a pro, based on my research. So I was like, if I'm ready, then that means I'm ready. So maybe I should be the one to make the decision. Not maybe. I'm the one who's going to make the decision when I turn pro, because this is my career, right? So I was like, okay, I can change my schedule to work with the pro team now. We'll see how that comes along. We'll see how my martial arts progresses, how I feel. And then after that, after a couple months of doing this, let's see if we can get a pro fight. And I was very committed to having my first pro fight be with an organization that was well known. There were a few reasons for that. That we could talk about at another time, but I was like, okay, let's try to get on Bellator, Invicta, Combate, or LFA. So on my own, I tried really hard to connect with the matchmakers and that type of thing. A lot of people go the other route, right? So they many people play the local circuit for a while, to get a few wins under their belt, that type of thing. I'm not really the type of person to shy away from a challenge or bright lights, and I knew that. I'm also someone who looks to make this my career, and I'm practical, so I know that money is a part of it. So and especially having left my full-time career that was somewhat lucrative, especially compared to fighting, this was a business decision.
Right.
You know what I mean?
So smart. You're not, I mean, I just did a podcast. We were talking about, it's MMA fighters have the highest number of graduate degrees of any other any other sport. And, it's nice to see, someone who's really, really analyzed what's going on and how you can make yourself successful. And it's just so smart and so brilliant. And I think a lot of up and coming fighters, male or female, would do well to listen to this, to see how you took a very active role in managing the trajectory of your career. And it's fantastic. So I know there was a fighter here in New York and went pro way too early. And I went into fighting too early, didn't have such a career, went pro way too early and was not so successful. And now, instead of being able to make a career out of it, he's probably the opponent journeyman, if anything, at other fights. And I feel sorry for him. But it's like, when you don't manage things properly, it's very hard to get the second or even the third chance if things don't go well. Second chance is hard, and third is even doubly, even more hard, exponentially harder. So I think you've done a great job, and it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, the way I see it, it comes down to accountability again, right? So, I can't sit around and be like, oh, my coach didn't do this for me, my manager didn't do this for me. The world doesn't owe you anything. If you want something, then there are different ways to go about it. And if you don't know how to get it, then ask the people that you trust who know about that thing. And if you don't have those people in your life, you have to go find them. No one's just going to come up to you and be like, hey, you want to be a pro fighter fighting on a good on a good card with a great organization that's televised? No one's going to just give you those things. You know what I'm saying? It's really important, if you want something, to take accountability for, getting it. And you know what? I think another thing too about that kind of stuff that people don't realize, especially when they're early on in their career, any career, right? No matter what you decide to do, is that there's always going to be situations that try to pull you down, right? There's going to be obstacles in your way of getting to what you want. That doesn't mean that you're not going to get there. That means that there's obstacles in your way. That's all that means. The world is not trying to tell you that you shouldn't be doing this, or it's not a sign from above. It's like, listen, everybody that does something, especially if it's hard, is going to have obstacles. The people who are successful in the end are the people who don't let those obstacles stop them, and they just keep going. Yeah, it can be difficult, and challenges are part of what make the journey. But at the end of the day, if you want something, you just have to keep on working for it. Like there were times when I did get frustrated. I wasn't getting a pro debut, and I was like, here I am staying ready, eating kale every night, just in case, just in case I get the call. And it didn't happen when I wanted it to. It also didn't happen the time after that or the time after that, but then it happened after that. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Absolutely.
And I think that's an important life lesson, is that I forgot one of the Gracies said, you say, I don't need martial arts because I don't fight. Well, life is a fight. Every moment of your life is a fight to achieve your bliss. And if you have to see it like that, and the persistence and the obstacles in your way are the price you pay to mold your success. And I think it's very similar to jiu-jitsu, like you're trying to pass the guard. You're trying to pass the guard, and there's this knee right in there. Well, you have to get it out of the way, or you have to go around it. You're not just, nobody's going to just take their legs and move them to the side. You want to submit the arm. Okay. Nobody's going to just give their arm to you. You have to find a way around those obstacles. And that is a metaphor for our how we live our lives. Nothing comes easy. Life is a fight. And I think that's 100%. Also why people find fighting very inspiring. Of course, everybody finds athletes inspiring and things like that, but I think fighters have a certain aura, because we know how close, what the level of drama in an MMA match or any combat sport is way, the stakes are way higher than basketball or football. Nobody is dying in a football game. Nobody is getting a concussion that could, or broken orbital bone that could end their fight career forever in a basketball game. And that is something that could very well happen in MMA fight. You're stepping in there and risking life and limb, the highest level of drama, the highest level of commitment, the highest level of risk to prove something internal and to be an inspiration. And I watched the fights you posted, and I actually, you are one hell of a gutsy fighter. There is no quit in you. There's and I always knew it. It's just a great inspiration. I hope people find you and become fans. And I really hope to see you in the UFC. And I actually know, I know you'll be in the UFC. I know you will. And I just look forward to that time,
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you. I'm glad that you recognize that, because it is a goal of mine to put on exciting fights, to showcase my skills and
your jiu-jitsu's come a long way. Really tight choke. And if you ever come back to New York, you can always drop by Radical. It's I would love to have you, but please let us know. Can you tell us when the fight is and how they can watch you and things like that?
Yes, absolutely. So my next fight is going to be on Friday, February 7th. It will be aired live on UFC FightPass. It's going to be at 5 p.m. Pacific, which is 7 p.m. Kansas time, which is where the fight is, but that makes it 8 p.m. Eastern time. So that's live on the app, on the UFC app. It's with Invicta Fighting Championship, and I will be the first fight.
Wonderful.
So,
very nice.
The very first thing at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Do not miss it. It's all women, and there is the atomweight title fight is the very last fight, the main event, and then the co-main event is a flyweight, potentially a title contender, or what do they call those when the person who wins is gonna probably fight for the title next?
Right, the
title eliminator.
Eliminator,
whatever.
right. Wonderful.
Yeah.
I will be watching 100%. And it's so great to have you on the podcast, and also just great to reconnect because we haven't really spoken since you left New York. And I hope we can share the mats. I know my wife and I, we are planning a trip to California, so I look forward to seeing you.
Awesome.
And
Yeah.
they would be fantastic. And I'm your biggest fan. Maybe not your biggest fan, but one of the top 5 at least, okay? I'll always be rooting for you. You're amazing. And, what you said in this podcast is like great for, I think, any person or just a prospective fighter, to male or female, doesn't matter, to see how they can make their career go forward. So thank you for that wonderful, wonderful advice. And really,
welcome.
best of luck to you. You don't need luck, though, because you got everything covered.
That's right.
And if you ever want to come back
on,
on,
that really means a lot.
fantastic. If you ever want to come back on again after your victory, we'd love to have you.
Sure. Yeah, I would love to.
Fantastic.
Happy to do it.
Do you want to shout out to any of your sponsors or anything like that before you go?
Sure, yeah. I would like to thank Genesis Recovery. I really appreciate all their support of me. The work that they do out here in San Diego is super important, and it's really awesome, and I'm so happy to represent them. I would like to thank Athlete Advantage Medical. They do some really cool stuff, too. They help athletes pre-fight and probably post-fight, too, with their medicals. So they help find the places that you need to get all your medicals at a really cost-effective price. They're the best. Thank you so much, Casa de Coronados Cafe. It's the best breakfast in Tijuana. Thank you so much. Thank you so much to my mom, Pet Portraits by Deb. She does custom pet portraits, and she also does custom portraits of any kind. And thank you so much to my credit counselor. I really appreciate all your support. And last but not least, Apex Dental Sleep Lab is a custom mouthguard place that takes a digital image of your mouth and makes custom mouth guards that do not make your mouth like really tired when you're, I almost said fighting, but doing whatever activity it is you need a mouth guard for. So you conserve your energy, and it also protects your specific jaw and skull against certain strikes and things like that based on the imaging that they use. So they're super high tech. They're the best. They're a sponsor of mine, and I will be wearing their mouth guard in my fight on February 7th.
Fantastic.
And that's it. Yeah.
Wonderful having you on, and I can't wait to talk to you for your victory interview, okay?
Me too. Thank you so much, Rene.
Thanks.
So
Bye.
nice to chat with you.
My pleasure. Absolutely my pleasure. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, you too. Bye.
Bye.